Well, good morning to all as the gusts of autumn begin to gust and the leaves swirl. Pat McGart is the master of all of these things and he's waiting for us in Donegal. How are you this morning, Pat? Wind
I'm
blowing?
grand, I'm
Wind
grand, Jude.
swept?
One, one swept and interesting. By the way, I'm a year older since we were last chatting,
Oh,
so
yes, that's right. It was your birthday yesterday, was it?
yeah,
Oh,
just
congratulations.
thanks very much. But the thing about remember that Jude and the biblical 3 score and 10.
Oh,
Jesus, at one stage that was sort of way up on the road ahead. It's now remarkably close.
isn't it horrible? It's like one of these fun fair things that keeps going faster and faster and faster, like in a
Uh,
uh,
my dad, a great one. I remember one time he says, "Life's like a river starting up on a mountain. It starts with a wee trickle, and then it gets and gets faster as it goes towards the sea." And
yeah.
I think life's like that.
That's right. You feel you're going to drown at any
You,
minute.
st- you start with a wee drop, and then suddenly there's a big rush to the sea.
Sounds like a
Okay,
night.
Jude.
Sounds like a night in the pub to me, Pat.
uh,
Anyway, let's get down to the business in hand. One of the things that popped up, it's a relatively minor item, but I'm glad you drew my attention to it. And there's this woman in Carrickfergus, I think,
uh,
who had a few words for Kate. Do you want to?
uh,
I'm sure our viewers know about it, but just remind them maybe.
I think it might have been an impromptu around Belfast.
Oh,
Jude, I
was
think it
it?
was I think it might have been Belfast. Kate and Will were going around shaking hands, everybody. And this woman says, "Nice to see you, but sort of preferred to had it been in your own country." You know, Jude.
Well,
I sort of I wrote it down. Nice to meet you, but it would have been better if it was when you were in your own country. Yeah, that's right. Ireland belongs to the Irish, she said. Now, apparently, this woman was videoing it as she
uh,
was talking. But I think it's okay. Maybe it was a wee bit ill-mannered and whatever. But here's the thing: I think that the days of calf stuffing and this sort of thing that we used to. It shows the confidence and the absolute change of attitude
hmm,
amongst the sort of the Catholic nationalist population. Now, I don't know if that's the right denomination to put it,
uh,
but
uh,
that's like the days of sort of putting your head down and keeping your head below the parapet definitely seems to be over. There's a
yeah,
whole change. There's a sea change, and that there indicates. Dude, a couple of years ago, the police would have been probably battening in there and all the rest of it, but everybody
yeah.
stayed out of the way. So, Jude, I thought it was a really interesting one that somebody actually did that.
It's just that I said that I thought it was Carrickfergus was your newspaper, the Irish
Yeah,
Daily Mirror, says the encounter happened in what is a predominantly nationalist area of Belfast, and
yeah.
yet I thought somewhere else they said Carrickfergus.
No, Jude, I'm not saying over it, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it was Vincent Kearney's version.
yeah,
They know the Northern editor of the RT that
yeah.
I read, and I'm pretty certain he said it was. No, I
Yeah.
didn't take a note of that, but
Well,
where
I think
exactly
it's
it was.
much. I think it's much more likely it was in Belfast than it was in Carrickfergus.
Jude, I'm pretty certain he said Belfast.
You do know, of course, that Kate and William are Baroness and Baron of Carrickfergus.
Didn't know that.
That was one of the first things the Queen did in 2011. So, why do you think they visited? Pat, why do you think they visited? I saw, incidentally, the sort of stream of cops on their bikes and flashing lights and 4 or 5 or 6 big Range Rovers, BMWs with a blacked out windows streaming past me. And
Uh,
that's what it was for. They were on their way to Carrickfergus, I'd figure. Why did they do it? Why did they come here
I,
in the north now?
I think they're Jude. The whole thing is they're trying to nail something down. There's so much change now. Like Charles, when he was Prince of Wales, visited someone like apparently 39, 40 times Northern Ireland. I
Yeah,
think the Royals are trying to get in there. I bet you as well. There've been quite a few visits to Scotland and to Wales.
yeah.
Jude, there's a whole. We'll probably come on to it later, but there's a whole dynamic for change now, and I think the Royals want to sort of. Know the whole thing about the Queen apparently choosing today in Balmoral. I think she was trying to keep the unity of the United Kingdom together, and so on. And and I noticed Nicola Sturgeon and all these people have definitely calmed down the calls or the rhetoric in regard to Scottish nationalism and all the rest of it. And I presume they're waiting for all this to
Mm.
die down. So
Yeah, I
it's
think you're right.
strategic. But
Yeah.
I think the Royals, Jude, are on a sort of a mission, visit everywhere, up the profile, and try and keep this whole place together. Like that's the way it has. Like
Yeah.
I remember being told, Jude. I remember very clearly when we were doing during my other studies that it was all about culture, and one of the things said the royal family were the cement that held the union together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can see why. I suppose they arrange these things quite a while in advance, but I can see it as a counterbalance to that 5,000 that gathered in Dublin,
Absolutely.
and all the talk about a united Ireland. In a way, it's to calm the horses of
Yeah.
Carrickfergus and other such like places. Um, I thought the woman said the thing about Ireland belongs to the Irish. I looked at the film again, and she almost said that after the kid had gone past her.
Uh,
But you're right. I think it was a tone she said it in. It wasn't aggressive. It
uh,
was, it was a sort of conversational. The other thing that I thought was kind of funny that she shook hands with Kate,
uh,
and she held her. Kate was going to pull out and go on after she said, "How are you doing?" And she held her hand. And said, "Well,
uh,
you better." But it is a bit rude to say, you'd be better off in your own country.
I know someone. I am. I take the point she was making and so on, but sometimes I think I there's rudeness and there's a place for everything and all the rest of it. But
Mm.
anyway, she was making her point, and yeah, I can't
Uh,
argue that much. But I thought the point, it's the conversational way, and she says, "Nice to see
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was very clever. It's
you." Yeah.
making the point without being aggressive or nasty
Yeah,
about it.
and I think, I
Um,
mean, I know lots of Republicans will probably saying, "You guys are milking water. What do you think you're supposed to do?" But anyway,
yeah. Okay, let's go on to a slightly less pleasant topic, and that is the topic of another job. Now,
yeah,
as it happens, Pat, I'm going for a job tomorrow.
uh,
Tomorrow. But that's for influenza.
can I
It's
ask
for
you any?
influenza.
Oh, influencer. Sorry, I forgot.
Only influenza. And I don't have any qualms about that. We get that every year.
Same
Uh,
here.
if in fact, I was looking to keep my eye out to see when would we get another job for COVID. I have no problems with that. I've had 3 or 4 jobs already for COVID, and they haven't done me any harm. So
Uh,
why would I be afraid of it now?
yeah,
And if it's going to give me a little bit more protection, terrific, great, no problem. But you feel
yeah.
there's some people are pulling back
Oh
from
no,
it now.
put it this: that I'm based on purely on anecdotal evidence,
Hmm.
or empirical evidence, whatever term you want to use. I've been
Anecdotal will do.
anecdotal a little bit. I've been talking to no, I do a couple of creative writing classes, and I was chatting to various people and so on, and we were sitting chatting one day there quite recently, and I'd say about 70% of the people said, "No, no, no more jabs. We've had enough of these jabs," and they're concerned. And there is a sort of COVID fatigue, or vaccine fatigue.
Hmm.
Jude, they keep saying, "How many more?" Like people have this idea. Look, we're putting someone into our bodies. We don't know what's in it, and I think there's a concern about. Wait a minute. Most people at this stage, Jude, I think I've had 3. How many have you had? I think I've had
I
3.
have at least 3, maybe 4.
Uh, uh,
Well, that's true. I know you don't have any guarantee with any of these things that they're sort of injected into you. But frankly, I'd weigh it in the balance, and I would still say I'd prefer to have the job. In fact, I'd be very glad to have another job.
uh,
If it marginally increases the chances I won't get the damn thing, then I'm happy to do that. There still are people who are getting COVID. A friend of mine got COVID.
oh, Jude,
He's in
that's
hospital now.
That's why I brought this up. I wrote that this down because, as I keep telling you, I'm useless with figures. EU 1.5 million cases last week, up 8%. Hospital in Italy admissions are up 32% and 45% in Britain. So it looks like there's a wave coming back again.
Mm. In fact, I was talking to this person who, the wife of this man that got COVID, and he's in hospital, but he's in the admittance ward, which means essentially just they can't get him a bed. Um,
Yeah.
and her point was all the money that was spent on all those police and those 4 or 5 or 6 Hummers going along, that even a wee bit of that would have been very helpful for an extra bed, you know?
Jude, I know someone, and they'll get away with it, because they're going to turn around and say they were doing the patriotic thing. But the Tory party is handing out hand over fist contracts to friends, fraudulent, basically contracts. These people who were given millions for PPE equipment, which never showed up, which was totally wrong. Like, it was like given a contract, wasn't it, to a company for shipping that didn't have any ships. This sort of
That's
stuff.
right. Yeah.
But the amount of money that was spent, I think, and then they said they have no money for nurses and doctors and providing beds and all the rest of it. Jude, all that, and I think a lot of it was, well, put it like this, nepotism, to put it mildly, and criminality, if you really went at it.
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I think the ideal situation would be if they had a sort of an open offer to anybody who could supply this, and then an independent body would assess which of these is the best in terms of price, in terms of guaranteed quality, and so on, and then pick that. But I think maybe at the time they didn't have time for that, so they moved quickly. I personally would have no problem with them picking out one of their mates if that mate was as good as any of the others who were offering it. I think that's a natural tendency we all have. If there's a job to be done and somebody, you're very happy for them to do it. I'd feel the same way, honestly.
No, Jude, no, I don't buy it, because it was just too coincidental. And most of these big contracts, and some of them were massive, were all donors to the Tory party. Were friends.
Yeah, they were their mates. That's what I'm saying, Pat.
I know, but Jude, no, I can't go along that. I think that's grand for me and you. If I want, I know I've got a leak out there, and I know somebody who's a plumber. Hey, Charlie, come on down. Fix that for me. Fair enough. But Jude, when they're talking about maybe 100 million contract, because that you're mate, and I don't think that you can apply that sort of mate.
How would you? But you see, in order to make sure it's not your mate, you'd have to have some sort of external body which would adjudicate on this. Who's going to get this big
tell me it'll be very difficult to get, say, right, I'd say to 3 High Court judges, look, we need you for a couple of hours, and we can stand over this. This is an emergency. I know that the Chief Justice say we need 3 judges. Here's the contracts. Here's the details. We need a decision within 48 hours.
You think it could be done that quickly?
I'm bloody sure it could.
If it could be, I totally support that. I'd give them the pass if the urgency of the situation demanded swift action. But if you'd get that kind of action, I have a funny feeling, Pat, that it would take longer than 48 hours.
I might take that, but Jude, say that we need, and this is boring people to death, probably. We need 1 million PPE here. Jude Collins can do it for 500,000. Pat McGart can do it for 400,000, and somebody else can do it for 300,000. And here the balance is one's efficient, the other ones we're not sure about. So they tell me that, like,
that'd be you. That'd be your one.
But surely, they could get some sort of coterie of people together and say, right, that's the best value for money.
I accept that. That's true, and that's one of the curses of, but particularly maybe the Conservative Party. There's so much back scratching going on. Guys getting, and the questions are never asked by the media. That's what drives me nuts. What you've talked about, I don't remember anybody mentioning any possibility of a link between the Tory party and the contract until about a year or two had passed.
Yeah.
And then you got people making noises. It's too late at that stage.
Yeah. And of course, I remember some of the I can't remember the name. A couple of Matt Hancock and people like that saying, we do not apologize for giving contracts to our friends. We were doing our patriotic duty and all that. That struck me, the same old Trump one. I have made my daughter a sort of ambassador to somewhere, and I'm doing it for the good of the country, not for her self-advancement.
Well, it's the old thing too that many of the political parties here in the north, I think particularly the DUP, would stack their office staff with their brothers and their sisters and their aunts and their uncles and their whatever, nieces and nephews. Although, you see, and another part of me is kind of sort of mixed feelings. You want to make sure that people are going to be on your side. If you're a family, and normally assume you are.
Hume's wife, Pat, was his, and John had a brilliant answer to it, and it wasn't. He says, Pat, he said to me, I actually asked him about it one day. He says, I get, and it was 100% true. He says, would somebody in the office, would they be there at 12 o'clock at night to take a phone call? Would they be there at 7 o'clock in the morning? Would they be there Saturday and Sunday? His wife, I'd say, worked every minute and every hour at God Centre, because she was on duty 24/7, 365.
Yeah, you see, there's a lot to be said for that. Although, yeah, as I say, well, you pointed out, there's a terrible danger of nepotism taking over. But that's past now, it's gone. You know, whoever made the killing has made the killing, not the literal killing, but the financial killing. Okay, let's move on to a happier topic, which is the abolition of the border in Ireland. No, well, not the abolition, but the question of how it should be approached. Now, here's one that really struck me, Pat. Norman Tebbit was reported as saying, it looks more likely than not that in the not too distant future, there will be a united Ireland. Now, Norman Tebbit is no friend of republicanism. And for him to say that, I don't think he was saying that because he was, you know, decided he'd like to talk. I think that's a signal being sent. Do you?
Yeah. And he, by the way, he wrote that in the Telegraph. So he's sending it out to all the old colonels and the old fogies and their clubs and whatever.
Yeah.
The unity of this, and all that sort of guys. So no, Jude, what do you call him? George Osborne. I remember he said the sort of the tide was running one way, and he says the politics would follow. You know, the money's running one way, and the politics would follow. Now we have had Norman Tebbit. Jude, let's start again. Everything's running against unionism. The demographics are running against them. The finances, they can't trust the Tory party. The debate in Scotland is running very much in favour of the nationalists right now. Wales is as a sort of nascent nationalism growing there. And you look at it, everything that the DUP have done, Jude, they have ballsed up magnificently. They went for Brexit, the hardest Brexit. They took the Tory party's word. They got screwed. And Jude, it just seems to be every which way you turn. Unionism is getting it in the face.
Yeah, well, here's an interesting one now, because that meeting in Dublin and the one in the waterfront that we were both at were supposed to be civic nationalism.
Yeah.
You know, there were politicians involved, clearly. And it was very obvious that Mary Lou McDonald was as near as damn it to the keynote speaker. I think I said that before. But Justine McCarthy has an article in today's Irish Times, and she says the heading is "Politicians on both sides of the border have lost control of Ireland's destiny," and essentially saying that it's grassroots stuff. And I'm not sure that she doesn't say that maybe it's good to keep the political parties out. She does talk about Fine Gael getting ready to take on the Taoiseach role in November, I think it is, and that part of that will be a big move on their part towards talking about a united Ireland or arranging things. Would you think that's likely to happen, Pat? And if it did, would it be good?
I did. I think Micheál Martin has been a disaster when it comes to this unity thing. Talk about milk and water. Talk about Tebbit. He keeps running away from it and so on. And Jude, everything else is, the politicians are behind the people in this debate, way behind. I was at the thing in Dublin last week, and that was the first time ever in the houses of the Oireachtas, and it was said openly that they'd actually discussed this whole thing about Irish unity. And fair play to Mark Daly, the Cahirlock of the Shannon. I think Mark was the catalyst for bringing that about. Right. But there's been no TDs have got brought up this whole thing, and a unity discussion in the Dáil. The political parties, Micheál Martin skimmed over to the speech at the Ardèche.
Pat, all right, he wasn't at the thing, Micheál Martin, but he had a good excuse, like he had his meeting of his party.
He probably wouldn't have showed up anyway.
Well, maybe, probably not. But every other party was represented. Yeah. So I'm wondering why Justine McCarthy would say this, that somehow it's out of control of the politicians on both sides of the border. I would have thought, well, certainly Sinn Féin's very involved. Now,
Yeah.
would you suspect that Fine Gael is going to grab the United Ireland banner
Well,
and go
something
with him?
a very, very strange thing. Both Simon Coveney and Leo Varadkar were much stronger on the unity thing than Micheál Martin or Enda Kenny, before them as Taoiseach. In fact, Enda Kenny and Michael Noonan, I remember, were, I thought, a joke when it came to the discussing.
Yeah.
And Coveney and Varadkar were actually, very strong on this whole thing about unity. They're not on the same level as Sinn Féin, but they weren't running away from it, and they were willing to discuss it.
Yeah, well, I remember certainly Leo Varadkar saying that the nationalists in the north would not be left behind again.
Yeah,
Remember that
yeah,
famous remark?
yeah,
But
yeah.
then at the same time, even back to a couple of days ago in Dublin, in the Three Arena, he said, we've got to go slowly and we can't be rushing this. And, it was filled with caution. And some of the crowd, I gather, were booing him when he said that.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
leave aside whether they think there was a good thing to do or a bad thing to do, but he was urging caution. He was a handbrake on the movement at that point. So he didn't sound then like a man who was going to throw himself wholeheartedly when he became Taoiseach into pushing for United Ireland.
I don't know which one of them, but there was somebody mentioned about the fact that this they keep saying this thing about a talk about a United Ireland is divisive. Richard, the biggest divisive thing was the imposition of the border 100 years ago. So let's drop that.
But you know what they mean, Pat. You know what they
I know,
mean.
but Jude, we need to start talking about it everywhere. Back again to the. Let's repeat them. It's like a mantra. I'm sounding like John Hume. Keep repeating it. 4 out of the 6 counties are already a majority.
Yeah.
Nationalists. Belfast is
Belfast,
no longer
the nationalist
controlled by
city.
the
Yep.
Unionists.
Yep.
Sinn Féin is now the largest party in the north. If and when the assembly gets up and running, Sinn Féin are going to take the First Minister's position. Judah could keep going. And that's the reality. And for politicians and the establishment and the Republic to sort of keep running away from that. And Jude, let me repeat myself one more time. The first debate in the houses of our parliament was last Friday. You sort of go and ask yourself, right, who? Now, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what Justine McCarthy means, Jude, because it's Sinn Féin have been involved in there. Now, the politicians haven't been great, I have to say that, but that doesn't mean to say, did she say they haven't the right to speak on this or they've lost? What was that term you used?
Well, the term that I took down was, yes, politicians on both sides of the border have lost control of Ireland's destiny. I think they've sacrificed, the nuances and the truth of it for the sake of a ringing phrase or a ringing sentence.
So,
but if you stop to think about it, like, why should it be either or?
Yeah.
Clearly there's grassroots movement. Certainly if you take Ireland's future as being grassroots, that's a huge movement. But there's no reason why political parties and political leaders can't get involved, as they were at that arena meeting, why they couldn't then translate that into political action of some kind, as well as side by side with civic nationalism. I don't see a clash between the two.
Yeah. No, Jim, let's get this there. Was it 10 parties or someone were represented?
Yeah, 10, that's right.
10, aye. And there was representatives from various countries as well at it. 5,000 people were at it. Jude, and there was, I suppose Jimmy Nesbitt was supposed to be, he was the key speaker. But one of the things, and I really do believe it, see this reluctance to talk about the politicians to talk about unity. I think there are a lot of people in the unionist community, if they could get somebody to go out front now, that would bring more of them out willing to talk about it. But right now, if you're a Protestant, and I was watching some of the stuff on social media, there's a couple of young fellas talked at that thing the last day. I see some of the social media in their own community, they were called traitors and all the rest of it. Jimmy Nesbitt's got quite a lot of abuse on Twitter for this and so on. So, but I think the more the thing is discussed and the more people come out of the woodwork, and particularly from the unionist community, and say, look, I don't have a big issue with this, that will all start calming down. But right now, if you're a young Protestant and you come out and say, look, I am quite willing to consider United Ireland, you can hear the sort of brickbats coming their way, that they're traitors and that they're sellout artists and they're no surrender and all that sort of stuff. So if we start a discussion, maybe we can actually have a civilized discussion.
Well, I can see why a young Protestant, a young unionist would be feel that they were being sold out, because let's face it now, since the inception of Northern Ireland, the idea has been to put a roadblock on the way of a united independent Ireland. That's why you had partition. Partition is kept standing, let's say, for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
The troubles were all about, or very largely about, whether or not Ireland would be united and the Brits would leave and so on. So you can understand, I think I can understand the feelings of your average unionist, or maybe your more DUP type unionist, who would say, we've fought for so long to try to stop this, and you're asking me now to just, throw my hand in. It'd be a hard thing to take, Pat, if you were in their shoes, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but you know that thing that politicians, particularly down the south, will be sort of well, I think some of them, that they don't want to get in this debate because they might quote scare or unionism and all the rest of it. Jude, I think that day is done. The reality is, Jude, and the demographics are out there, that we're now an irreversible change. And what is it? I think it was Mark Daly said, I know the lack of policy never goes unpunished. When people look at, and it's a simple example, because Brexit has been turned a non-mitigated disaster for the Brits, and we saw more of it last week. They're trying to sort of come out with a mini budget because of the cost of living. They have no friends in Europe. They've lost out on Europe. Their health service is struggling big time. Their tourism industry, the hospitality sector. Dude, it's a perfect storm over there as well.
Yeah, well, to come back to Ireland, I think the south of Ireland, that is, I think the reason why Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have been reluctant to be too pro-United Ireland is because they know they can never out-shinner the shinners. And if you try, you're obviously going to be measured by the yardstick of the Sinn Féin party. So especially Micheál Martin, he doesn't want that. He wants to sort of chart some sort of different course than the Sinn Féin party. I guess Fine Gael would feel the same thing, although I think Leo Varadkar's trying to find a different way, because why else would he have said that thing about nationalists will never be left behind again? The trouble is, you see, once he said that, you look at his record then, since then, and the very opposite is happening. He's urging caution, he's saying, don't be talking about it, it's divisive, etc. So you need to make sure that your actions are going to match your words. If you are, like Varadkar, trying to, grab the flag of United Ireland and sort of lead the charge, or at least be one of the leaders. It certainly would be good for him, I think it'd be good for his popularity if he was to make that at least a pretty substantial plank in his programme once it becomes Taoiseach in November.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Jude, you keep coming back to this sort of thing, that they have to do something, and I get the impression non-stop that the politicians and the Republic are not. They don't want to go there.
Nah, they don't. Of course, they don't. Why would they? Why would they?
And I don't quite understand what McCarthy's getting at, but I know she's making that point. But you get them, And by the way, this sort of thing too, all the time. The Nationals in the North, 50%, and I know we discussed 50% plus one's not good enough. It has to be 60. Some sort of super majority, all this sort of stuff. It's a keep throwing out the line further and further, and see how long, and slow it down. But Jude, I think we're at we're now at the crux, and like what direction we take now is going to be very important.
Yeah. That thing about 50% plus one, I think actually is just to make, in an indirect way, to encourage those who are for United Ireland or campaigning for a border poll to have second thoughts. Essentially, in a way, it's saying you could have violence from unionism. One
point I would make, and it was going through my head when you were chatting earlier on. See, Mary Lou McDonald was basically Jamie Nesbitt was supposed to be the key speaker, but Mary Lou McDonald got apparently the biggest cheer. And there's one thing that always worries me. See, when it's Sinn Féin take over this, and then it becomes almost like a party political. See, Ireland's future. I know you're a little bit look on your face. You're going to say that's inevitable, but but you know, someone see
No,
one. I want this to be broad based. I really
I
genuinely do.
do too, Pat. I do too. But I really feel quite strongly in this. I mean, the same thing was said about the Irish language. That, you know, Sinn Féin had hijacked the Irish language. Well, I mean, it was such rubbish.
Yeah,
Just get in there yourselves. Shouldn't everybody
yeah,
be in, you know, promoting the Irish language? And to
yeah.
say, well, if Sinn Féin would step back from Irish language or step back from the GAA with their flag and they are in the vein, you know, everything we've got. I just think I don't agree with it. I think Sinn Féin have every right to be in there pushing
Well,
hard. I mean,
I'm
that's
not
their modus.
oh, no, I am not disputing that. The only thing is sometimes, you know, if somebody's standing and looking on the door and
I
they're
know,
Unionists
yeah,
and
yeah.
they can see all this flag
Aye.
waving, they might turn and walk away. Say, if you calmed it down a bit, maybe they would come in.
Well, maybe, but I mean, I don't even agree to that if it was that Sinn Féin should have a different strategy in their support of a united Ireland that doesn't maybe put off people like unionists who are reasonable. But again, it's a point of principle. You know, I mean, one, Sinn Féin are the one party that has pushed for
Yeah,
united
I'm
Ireland
not
over the
disputing
last
that.
40 years.
Yeah.
And secondly, you know, why not? Why not? Why would you be put off by saying this guy, these lot beside me are after the same thing that I'm after?
Yeah.
I just feel, you know, if I was a Sinn Féin party member, I think I'd be a bit pissed off, to be honest with you.
I mean, no, the old one, Jude, that you attract a lot more flies with honey than vinegar.
Well, I think they've done a bit of that too, like Mark
Yeah.
McGuinness shaking hands with
That's
Charles and
that is
so on.
exactly.
Okay, let's move
Mark
to
was
a
only
wider
nine.
sphere,
Yeah,
and that is the UK and the EU. Although
yeah.
Northern Ireland comes into it again. Apparently, the word now is that no more flare-ups from the UK will happen. The US says no more your flare-ups over Northern Ireland from the UK, please. And lo and behold, we've been having the British Secretary of State for Northern Ireland has been saying sort of mild words. We have the guy who was one of the arch Brexiteers,
Steve Baker.
Steve Baker. They're all saying nice stuff now and quiet stuff. And Martin has said that he's accepting the British good faith in this. It does look to me like a decision has been taken that they're going to get in and sort this protocol out one way or another. And I'll tell you now, I saw in the paper today that Jeffrey Donaldson says, no, we can't have any movement until parts of the protocol are resolved.
Yeah.
Now, about a week ago, he was saying the protocol must be, wiped out. We want to have this protocol bill in 100%. So, do you see Jeffrey edging back from this extreme position?
I do. Jude, there's no way the DUP can win this one. Absolutely not. In fact, if they stick to their position, Stormont is over. Absolutely, because there's no way the Nationals are going to buy into it. It has to work for both. But Jude, this guy, I wrote his name down, Derek Chollet. He's the state councillor at the Department of State and Americans, and it's very unusual that a guy at that level would go public in such a blunt way to tell the Brits no more flare-ups. But Jude, the other thing as well, what you're referring right now, Liz Truss, Jude, simply does not have the bandwidth to have another row with another group of people. The Americans Joe Biden made it very clear, no trade deal. Europe, they've fallen out basically with Europe. By the way, do you notice yesterday, Liz Truss, for the first time since Brexit, attended that meeting of the European community. I don't even remember what it's called, but
it's some sort of offshoot, and they're making a point that it's not the EU; it's just European.
But at a time with Russia threatening possibly nuclear use of nuclear weapons, the trade deal going south, their budget been an absolute balls up. The last thing she needs right now, they're 30 points behind Labour. The last thing she needs is the people coming out and saying, look, they've just ballsed up another thing with the EU. In the wake of Steve Baker turning around and saying, look, our behaviour towards the EU was unacceptable, and for which he apologised.
Yeah. Oh, there has been a total softening. The one question remains: what are they going to do with this protocol bill that was charging through?
Can I ask you a question? So what do you think they're going to now? How is Jeffrey going to get out of it?
I think he's going to say, well, look at what we got. They reassured us on this, that, and the other thing. Kit and William were in Carrickfergus last week.
Yeah,
They'll put a gloss on it, and they'll probably give them some little tidbit to keep them going. Pat, there's
yeah,
only 3 minutes, and I want to come to a final point. In the course of this, Dermot Ferreter has an article, and he talks about what we've just talked about a little while back, where it should be people-led, and this is, of course, of your man Jimmy Nesbitt's speech. It should be out of academic forums and into village halls and town halls, church halls, orange halls, people-led, etc. Now, as you know, I don't agree with that. I think it should be there, but it should also be with the political parties. But Doug Beattie was asked, why, would you not, contribute to this? Give us a British point of view. Tell us what's wrong with the model of a United Ireland we're building. And Doug Beattie's reply was, why should I give you the solutions to the problems you have? Why would I design something for you when I don't want it?
yeah.
I thought that was, it was certainly an original point. Do you agree with him? Do you?
Not at all. That's like a blind man saying, "I'll kick away my stick." You know that.
Tell me about that analogy quickly.
Something they're going to have to find a road down for unionism, and if their sort of attitude is, look, we're not going to help you. The reality is, when already the Catholics are in the majority. Jude, if I wanted to shape the future, I would get involved in the debate to stand around and sort of say, by the way, I'm not helping you. No, why should I help you?
But you see, that's crossing the Rubicon.
That means I get to make the decision, and well, that's like the Brits. They sort of want to tell the EU what to do, but they don't want to pay for it. You can't be a member of the club, stand outside the club, but want to have a say in the rules.
Well, you see, in a way, I think many unionists would see it. If their leaders were to go into, say, the meeting in the Three Arena, they would see them as trying to stake a claim for good terms in the United Ireland.
Yeah.
And that for them would be tossing in the towel. I think that's the problem for them. I don't think Doug Beattie really has. Well, Doug again has a terrible problem because the poor old UUP is up against the DUP, and just as Micheál Martin can't out-shinner the shinners, likewise UUP cannot out-DUP the DUPers. Tell us a joke, Pat, would you? Tell us a joke. Tell us a joke or sing a song. Or read a sketch of poetry.
I could say that statement by Doug Beattie was a bit of a joke, but that'd be a bit unfair.
Oh, nasty. I can see that your senior years haven't added to your wisdom and discretion. You're as wild as ever.
No. So I look forward now to sitting over the weekend, Jude, and doing my column for the Daily Mirror, and that'll keep me going.
Okay, Pat. Okay.
All the best, Jude.
All the best.
Good luck.